Matthew Hall loves watercolours, really loves watercolours.
Knowing where each mark goes beforehand, knowing where each little stroke of the brush, and it's a very deft technique, this sort of watercolour ability. It's not a busy, it's not a wash over, it's very carefully placed, every single mark. It's Barkentine on the Tagus coming out of Lisbon, and it's just got so much movement with so few marks. It's the most perfect little watercolour.
The artist is Edward Seago, a banker of a name in the world of watercolours.
I've never seen a bad one in 30 years. They're always absolutely crisp and beautifully executed.
Matthew co-founded Pall Mall gallery Panter Hall. This painting is one of his dream works. Unfortunately, watercolours are not as popular as they were.
It's just not a market that exists in the way it used to 30 years ago.
For many buyers, that's the problem. You can be extraordinarily passionate about art or wine or sports cars, but you will worry that only a few will make you money. One area that has done well in recent years is whisky.
If you would have invested, say, £100,000 into Scots whisky from 2018 to 2022, that would be worth £214,000 by the end of 2022.
Aaron is one of a relatively new breed of whisky cask brokers.
1901. So we primarily trade whisky casks. We provide collectors and investors the opportunity to purchase a cask of whisky for either enjoyment or investment purposes.
Whisky, like art, is for the enthusiast.
I recommend to every investor, if they can afford it, is to buy 2 casks. Buy one to invest into, to make money, and buy the other to enjoy, because that's what the market's about. The reason whisky makes money is because people drink it, so it's important that you enjoy it as well.
Art gallery Panter Hall is one of 550 members of LAPAD, the Association of Art and Antiques Dealers. Its chief executive is Freya Simms.
I think one of the most important things is to buy what you like. People who just follow a trend or follow an investment trend actually quite often don't really enjoy the goods. And there are no doubt people who do that and put things in storage, and they can, spread bet, and they're doing it for different reasons. But the things that hold the value, interestingly, but also hold your interest, are things that you love. I get slightly laughed at for saying that all dealers, if you like, so forget about just my members, but dealers generally, I think, are addicts and they're collectors and buyers much more than they are retail or salespeople, because most of them love the object and the thrill of discovery, and that is the passion. So by nature, they're collectors, and they become dealers to be able to afford the next thing they're going to collect.
I have my traditional investments, obviously, but whisky is my main investment. These whiskies behind me are all my personal collection, as well as quite a few whisky casks maturing in Scotland as well. Yeah, it's a big love of mine.
Now, it's all very well thinking you can walk into the sweet shop and all the candy will make you long-term money. This is capital you are spending, and where there's capital, there's a wealth advisor, such as Max Richardson from Investec Wealth and Investment UK.
The key thing that we look for in our investments is liquidity, and some of these things just aren't that easy to sell should you need to sell them in a hurry. So those things that tend to be a bit more illiquid, we tend to leave to clients to do themselves, and we can incorporate those into our understanding of their much broader wealth to help with our understanding of their risk appetite. But liquidity is key, really, for the bulk of what we do.
That's not all. When you buy lovely things, you need to keep them. And that's where you may need the help of your property person.
If you're going to store any important antiques or chattels, you need to obviously have somewhere to do it. It could be an old building that you convert or replace, or it could be a new building. Obviously, if they were agricultural farm buildings and you're using them differently, then there could be a planning angle to it and that side of things. You also need all the sort of services and the access and all the sort of unseen aspects of property to allow the property to be used in that way, and in amongst the sort of the estate and the property that it can actually be looked after securely. Or else I'm sure the insurers or anyone would have an issue with it.
Where one has a liquid investment portfolio that's managed professionally, you don't take insurance policies out to manage that, because the risk of theft obviously is very low. Whereas if you have a vintage car, expensive watches, these are things that can be removed from your property, and you have to pay insurance. And those prices for insurance are very, very steep these days.
I did used to look after an estate that had some had interest in sports cars, and they were fairly expensive. And he pretty much had one full-time staff that was a gardener as well, but I think his main role really was just to keep an eye on the place, make sure it was all, everyone knew what was going on, they had all the security measures, but they had someone there the whole time keeping an eye on it all, making sure it was all safe and sound, secure.
How about regulation for these markets? Unlike stocks and shares, surely whisky and watercolour dealers don't have the Financial Conduct Authority breathing down their necks.
I mean, on the contrary, the FCA makes sure that we understand the client's overall wealth picture. Whether it's part of the wealth that we invest on their behalf or not, we have to know that to be able to advise them properly.
We welcome any regulation in the market. As with every market that does well, it brings in unscrupulous characters and scallywags involved in the industry that bring the whole industry down as a whole. So we as a company, and many of us in the industry, welcome regulation.
You need references to be a member of a trade association. You need to have been a director at the top of a company for a certain amount of years to hone your expertise. And then within a fair context, what will happen is that the exhibitors will put out all of their works of art that they're hoping to sell that week. And then we will bring in art, decorative arts, furniture specialists, porcelain specialists, sculpture, who will come and they will scrutinise all of those objects that are going for sale, and they will look at them for whether they're a forgery, let's say, a copy, but actually it may well be something that's more subtle than that. That is it over restored? Is the label true reflection of saying what's happened to it? Have they got the kind of period right? Is it 1850 or is it 1880? So they will look at that, and the vetting committee is normally made up of a mixture of dealers, museum specialists and auction house specialists. So therefore you also miss any kind of politics in there.
Once you make the decision to collect, the message from the professionals is go for quality and go for the long term.
Some casks that we sell close to sort of £2 million a cask. We have other casks at the lower end of the market at 5 to 10,000. It really does depend on the individual's appetite for risk. We as a company, we recommend this as a long-term hold for at least 5 to 10 years. You're buying the liquid needs to mature, so you must give that liquid time. So return-wise, it averages between sort of 5 to 10% a year, but that does depend on what cask it is, what region that's from, and what distillery that's from.
There are areas where it's always tried and tested, and that's really jewellery and watches and things like that. And if you are buying signed pieces by recognised designers and they're in good condition, and they're a limited edition in terms of that just goes on. And that is also, the limited edition element is also really helpful. And we have a policy in our fair that for contemporary works of art, it's very limited in the edition that you can bring to the fair, because actually that is where the value is.
There are a number of clients that I'm aware have dabbled in the art market in the past and have been able to buy well-renowned pieces from well-renowned artists and be able to sell those at auction. So there's a well-established route for certain assets, if you like, and that would include assets like jewellery and watches these days as well. So these markets can be volatile, but there are sources and pockets of liquidity for clients if they need them.
How about that Edward Seago watercolour? Would Matthew turn away a buyer if they didn't share his passion for the painting?
No, I don't think so at all. They just have to have 12,000 quid.
If you want to know more, you can meet Investec Wealth and Investment UK, Carter Jonas, LAPAD and Whisky 1901 at the Game Fair, the 26th to the 28th of July 2024 at Blenheim Palace.